So tonight we're talking about what does it mean to be a man, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So crazy question to me, just because I feel like we don't really ask that question about women. You know, like what does it mean to be a woman? I don't feel like people are asking that question. You know,
Yeah, a real woman too, right?
yeah, what does it mean to be a real woman? Nobody ever asks that.
Yeah. So I noticed in the comments from the joint post. So there was that quote, right? That women are made. No, women are born, men are made, right? That was a quote. That was a quote. I don't know exactly where it's
Yeah,
from, but there were a few people that disagreed with that.
yeah.
So people say that women are also made. What are your What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know, man. I mean, I don't think I think a woman is made when a girl matures into adulthood. You know, I would say that's how a man is made too.
Okay.
So to me, it's about maturing into adulthood. But I think because of men, stereotypically men have a bigger ego. You know, we're a little bit more egocentric than women are, so it seems, or stereotypically we are. And to me, it's like that's just that's just an excuse for men to make manhood into something that validates the ego.
Okay.
It's like, but I don't think women have that problem.
You don't think women have as much of an ego problem?
I'm not saying they don't have egos. I'm just saying that it manifests differently, and maybe it's not as outward and like performance oriented.
It's true.
Whereas men, it's like I think God made us with a desire to perform and to um, compete and grow and achieve and conquer. And so it's easy for us to tie that into our identity. It's like, well, you're not valid unless you meet XYZ standard, you know?
Right.
And I just don't think women, yes, they have an ego, but I don't think they have that same temptation to set up some sort of performative standard that they have to meet.
I feel that. Yeah, I agree. I agree. So you said you're able to pull up some of the comments from that last post that we posted.
Yeah, yeah, we had some really interesting comments on that post.
Yeah,
And for those of you,
I wasn't checking into them too much, but I was keeping an eye on them, and I think there's some people that posted some valid thoughts on there.
yeah, oh yeah,
So if you want, we can dive into those a little bit and discuss those, see if we agree or not. Or
yeah, let's check them out.
like I said, this is all. I mean, I don't claim to be an authority on anything. Like I'm not a masculine guru, manhood guru. This is all. The post was intended to give a voice to the people, right? And
Yeah,
so I think
100%.
I think a lot of men actually gave some good responses in the comments.
Yeah, I, I agree. Yeah, and for those of you who are just joining or don't know what we're talking about, we did a post yesterday, and you can see that on the Syndicate of Strength page or the Narrow Way Man page. But just kind of asking, hey, what does it mean to be a real man? What does that look like? And so um, we're diving into that tonight. So some of the comments we got, I'm just going to kind of sort by popularity here. So it looks like the top one said, hey, it takes a real man to follow Jesus Christ. And I firmly believe that's one of the marks of manhood, to die to yourself every day and live for something greater than yourself, for God. That was the most liked comment. So,
Okay.
what do you think?
Well, if you like to, I think it'd be helpful and it'd be practical to look at this subject from non-religious point of view first. You know what I mean?
I do. Yeah.
There's a lot of, like we're both men of God, right? But not everybody is.
Right.
And there needs to be discussion on what this means in practicality to everybody.
Right.
And so, yeah, I agree. But what can we say about people, or what advice can we give, or what information can we give to people that don't believe in Jesus, people that
Right.
don't believe in the Bible? So I like to speak on that first. I'd like to talk about this from a universal
Yeah.
perspective, and then we can tie it into God if we want. And I think we should, on the front end, keep it practical, universal for everybody, and then on the back end, tie it into God for the believers, right?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, because it's
I know a lot of the people that support my page. Not everybody believes in God.
right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I agree that, like, when I read this comment, he says it takes a real man to follow Jesus Christ. And I firmly believe that's one of the marks of manhood. I think I see where he's coming from, but I'm with you in a sense of like, okay, so does that mean that you're not a real man unless you believe in Jesus?
right.
See, I would call that Christianese. It
Yeah.
sounds good. It's like, yeah, you want to be a real man, you got to believe in Jesus. That sounds like, honestly, what some like 2010s dressing celebrity pastor is going to say. Real men believe in Jesus, and everybody's like, yes. Well, it sounds good, but and I think I'm a Christ follower myself. I think I would like to see everybody believe in Jesus, but I think that's not helpful. That's not helpful to the question.
Right. Like, where's not taken away from that, right? Because
Right.
but where's the practicality in that for non-believers, right?
Right. 100%.
Like where is it? So
Yeah.
I agree with the comment, but it's not helpful 100% to everybody, right?
Right. 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 Yeah. Westo said, "Real men love Jesus." Definitely a celebrity pastor needs to say 100%. Yeah. It's like
Right.
that's why I get tickled about this real man deal, because it's like real man, and then whatever they say next is just whatever that person thinks, right? It's like it's like where you getting this,
Yeah.
how is this helping someone that doesn't share your experience? Another one of the comments that was good, at least in popularity, said being a man is having a spine and a pair of balls. A spine is knowing what you believe, and balls is being willing to stand for it.
I could get behind that. I think I made a similar pose back in the day, like having a spine. What does it mean? You erect, you stand for something, right?
Yeah.
So you have beliefs, you have convictions, you have thoughts of your own. You stand by those. And what was the other end of the ball section of that?
Yeah. The ball section was being willing to stand up for it. So,
Okay, so the way I see balls is like, you have this boldness about you, this ability to take a risk. So I get that, yeah, that's part of being a man is, well, yeah, you have something to stand by, stand for, and then having the boldness to back that up, or
right.
the risk taking to be able to put yourself on the line
Yeah.
for your beliefs, right? So I get that.
Yeah.
I can get behind that. He's not.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. Part of being a man is having a backbone and some balls.
Yeah. Part of it. Yeah. Fight Club bus scene, somebody said, yeah. If you know, you know. That's the one I think about is when he's talking about is that when he's talking about what he's doing for a living?
I think I haven't seen Fight Club in a long time, so I don't know.
It's been a while for me too. But Fight Club touches on a lot of masculine elements for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah. So to me, when I read being a man is having a spine and a pair of balls, well, it's like, yeah, when you break down what that means, he says it's knowing what you believe and being willing to stand up for it, even die. To me, like, frankly, I want a woman that's like that too, to be honest. Like, I want my ride or die to also know what she believes and to also be willing to stand up for it. Because when we have this conversation about manhood, like, what does it mean to be a man or a real man? It's like, well, are we going to say that whatever our answer is doesn't also apply to women? Because then we're just saying, what does it mean to be a good human? You know, that's my thing is like, I think that's why it's such a subjective conversation is like, because when the celebrity pastor says real men believe in Jesus, well, it's like, what do real women do?
Right.
It's like, if you want to be a real man, you got to believe in Jesus. If you want to be a real woman, believe in Jesus. You know, it's like, well, now it's the same thing. Now you're just a good human. So it's just not very helpful to me.
Okay, so speaking on that, so what do you think? So you think that what it means to be a man is exclusive to men only and has nothing, like it couldn't also be applied to women?
So there's foundations to it, right? Or like levels, in my opinion, where to your point, when you opened up, you said that first comment was great, like believe in Jesus. That's fantastic. But that's like a certain level of being human that not everybody is at. That has to do with like a human's religion or a human's spirituality, right? And that's one element of our humanity is our spirituality or lack thereof, right? So to me, there are things that we start out with as humans that maybe men are lacking nowadays that everybody wants men to step into more. And so we talk about those things more. But to me, it's like, first of all, what's a good human? A good human is somebody who can be strong in the face of adversity. To say that that's just a man thing, I think is kind of a it's kind of a dig at women, you know, because women, I mean, they're not necessarily on the battlefield fighting actual wars like the men are, but that doesn't mean that they don't need to be able to stand in the face of adversity. You know, when we look at Proverbs 31, for example, and I know this is not a spiritual conversation fundamentally, but when you look at Proverbs 31, the word strength is used 3 times describing this woman. And so that leads me to think that strength is not necessarily exclusive to manhood. And so that's a long way of saying, yes, if we're talking about what it means to be a man as opposed to just a good human, then we should probably focus on things that are disproportionately applicable to men.
Okay.
That would be my take.
Okay. I get what you're saying. Okay, so there's something I want to have a conversation with you with. I want to run by you. It's something that I've noticed. And this isn't based on anything. This is just my thoughts, my opinions.
Yeah.
What I've noticed is where there's the confusion or the misinformation or like a misguiding direction when it comes to manhood or masculinity is because masculinity is used as a blanket term to describe at least 4 different things. So there's masculinity, masculine energy, manhood, and manliness. And all of those 4 are interconnected, but they're different, and they all fall under the umbrella term or the blanket term of masculinity. And to dig into that just a little bit, this is my opinion. The way I see it is every man has 3 aspects to him. It's a physical, mental, and spiritual aspect. His physical aspect is his masculinity. Masculinity, the way I see it, is what is exclusive to males only. And if you think about it, the only thing that's exclusive to males is their biology. So biologically, what is masculinity? What is masculine? Male reproductive organs, the testosterone level that only men can achieve, the
Yeah.
ability to grow a beard. Women can't do that.
Right.
There's a muscularity level. Muscularity in and of itself, women can be muscular too, but there's a level of muscularity that only men can achieve naturally, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with strength. Strength, like to your point, strength is neither masculine nor feminine. Women can be strong too, physically, but there's a certain level of strength that only men can achieve. And so that's the spiritual aspect the physical aspect of a man.
Right.
Is his masculinity, purely biological, right?
Right.
The mental aspect of a man is his masculine energy. And these are the masculine traits, the masculine psychology.
Yeah.
Typically seen in men, but women can also display it too, right?
Mm.
So you made a good list in your training, your polarity training. There was a good list that you made. The traits that you listed off were the tendency to want to expand, right? Sacrifice, protection, groundedness. These traits that are typically attributed to masculinity, they're more commonly seen in men, but women can display all of these too.
Yeah.
But what we find is that either they're not displayed on the same level, or they're not as important to women, or they're just not displayed as strongly in women, right? That's the mental aspect of a man. This is masculine energy. And the spiritual aspect of a man is his manhood. And what I mean by spiritual is, I don't mean it in a metaphysical sense, like believing in God or believing in any sort of metaphysical sense. What I mean by spirituality is that this is where most men, especially men that don't believe in God or that don't believe in anything, what I mean by the spiritual aspect is that this is where most men get their sense of meaning, their sense of purpose, their sense of identity. This is what spiritually drives a man to do something out in the world, is his manhood. And manhood comes down to three things, in my opinion, and that is refinement, responsibility, and roles. It's the refinement of his character through the responsibilities that he chooses to adopt based on the roles that he chooses to play in the grand scheme of life.
Yeah.
Right? And we can come back to that since the main topic here is manhood. But moving on, that's the spiritual aspect of a man, is his manhood. And now that fourth factor, manliness, that's completely a social construct. What's considered manly, here in America, growing a beard, shooting guns, driving a truck, drinking whiskey. Here in America, that's considered quote unquote manly, right? But you go somewhere else in the world, other things may be considered manly.
Right.
So those four factors all tie in together under the umbrella term of masculinity. And so when you hear people talking about masculinity, when you hear people say, oh, masculinity is a social construct, they're talking about manliness.
Right.
When you hear people say masculinity is about taking responsibility, serving, they're talking about manhood. When you hear people say masculinity, or when you hear people say that everyone has a masculine and feminine side to them, they're talking about masculine and feminine energy,
Right.
mental traits.
Right.
You hear people say that growing a beard and being more muscular makes you more masculine. They're talking about just the physical aspect of masculinity.
Yeah.
So those are my thoughts. Those are my thoughts that, that's where the confusion comes around, is that masculinity is used as just this blanket term to describe all four of those factors.
100%.
And like I said, that's just my thoughts. That's not based in anything. That's just what I've observed.
Yeah.
And I'd like your thoughts on that to see if you agree with any of that. You disagree? Or
No, you're speaking facts on the fact that people really don't know what they're saying and they're lumping too many things together. I will say though that it's only confusing, I think, because of how soft our culture is and how easy it is to live in modern life in the West anyway. So like in United States, Canada, Western Europe, these highly modernized countries where we have both the capacity and the freedom to not live according to our biological natures, right? So when we talk about, as you said, there's a biological element to men that women don't have, right? And people who don't agree with that probably are not watching this video, right? So even in 2025, we're just going to say that there are differences biologically, right? So I think 200 years ago, so not that long ago in the existence of mankind, 150 to 200 years ago, the world was such that a man had to live in accordance with his biological nature, right? So these things that you mention as masculine energy, right? Things that maybe make my list of expansion, conquering, challenging, protection, groundedness. What's interesting is if you turn up the testosterone dial on a man, those elements will naturally increase.
right, and that's what I was going to get to. Like I said, they all tie in together. So masculinity, in the physical sense, is what's exclusive to males. Higher testosterone levels are exclusive to males, and the higher your testosterone, the more masculine attributes, traits you display, right? And the more strongly they're displayed.
And at the same time, displaying those traits can be taught. It can be a choice that you make. And I think even though our modern culture has brought about a lot of confusion, something that it has demonstrated quite clearly to me is that these traits are not exclusive to men and they can be a choice, because nowadays when we see gay couples, when we see lesbian couples, we typically see one of them is exhibiting more masculine energy and the other one is exhibiting more feminine energy. And they may both have high testosterone or they may both have low testosterone. And so it's really, testosterone enables a more easy expression of these things for men. But with men being forced to tuck their tail between their legs, and with the feminist movement and with things of that nature to try to sand down the rough edges of manhood, masculinity, a lot of us have learned to suppress those natural expressions that high testosterone would otherwise bring about.
I agree.
Which is tough.
It is. Okay, so the main topic was manhood, right? Like I said, in my opinion, that's where most men get their sense of identity, sense of purpose, their sense of meaning. If you want to give your answer, like what is your opinion of a man, just manhood? Or we can go there first. What a real man is considered. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. My opinion on that is that, again, we don't ask this question for anything else in the world. We don't say, well, what is a real woman? What is a real lion? What is a real eagle? What is a real snake? We don't ask these questions. We just say, oh, it's a lion. Now, if that lion is sick or weak or confused or outcast or lazy, then those are the descriptors we use. But we don't say, oh, it's not a real lion. Right? But then when men are sick or confused or weak or lazy, now all of a sudden they're not real men. Right? So I think that that's just a construct of the ego, of men wanting to, like you said, identify too much with performance. And, and even though that can be very effective as a motivator, it's also very effective as a shame tactic. And as you and I both know, as men who have gone through the mountains and valleys of life, shame is not your friend, especially not in the valley. And what we see now is a lot of men who are confused, who are sick, whether in their bodies not having the right level of hormones and health, health, mental illnesses, a lot of confusion. We see a lot of them, and they may not be influencers, but they're watching the content and they're sitting there and thinking, "Man, I don't belong. I'm not a real man. I'm not. I don't deserve to be a man," or whatever it is, because of this voice of shame that says, "Hey, you're not enough," right? And I think it's just so obvious to me that that's a farce, because it's only with men that we do that. There's not another creation in Earth that we do that with. And so that's a very long way of saying, to me, a real man, uh, a real man was Bruce Jenner, right? A real man is a male who has matured into adulthood. That's all it is. We've invented fake men more recently. Fake men are what, they undergo surgeries and hormones and all these things to make them appear to be men when they're really not. That's a fake man. But real men are you and I and any other adult who was born with an XY chromosome, right? To me, that's what a real man is. And I think a lot of people hate that because it just doesn't stroke the ego. It's like, no, I want to be special. I want to be different. I want to prove myself. Well, it's like, yeah, we can talk about what it means to be a good man. We can talk about what it means to be a high value man. I do that a lot. But I don't think we should be challenging the identities of men and saying, hey, you're real, you're not real. That's not helpful to me, in my opinion.
So I agree with what you're saying, and like where you're going with this, and this because like, so there's shame involved, right? And we don't talk in this way with any other creation. We don't talk about this with women or anything else. But I think it's important to pay attention to how people use that term, real man. If you pay attention, like 8 times out of 10, it's used in 2 ways. When people are describing a real man, they're usually describing a respectable man, a good man,
Right.
an honorable man, a man that has integrity.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the bar is set so low nowadays that a man just taking care of his children, oh, that's a real man. A man opening the door for a woman, oh, hey, that's a real man.
Right. Yeah.
It's so if you pay attention to the context and the way it's used, it's always used to describe a man that's displaying some type of virtue, something honorable, something respectable. That's what's considered a real man. That's the first way. The second way it's used is that term is weaponized as a shaming or compliance tactic. A real man wouldn't do that. You're not a real man unless you do X, Y, Z. You know what I'm saying?
100%. Yeah.
That's what I've noticed is that that's the way a real man is used. And so, if the way you want to define it, you can stay within that frame. What is a real man? Well, it's a man that's displaying something virtuous, honorable, good. He's doing something good out in the world. You can reframe it. You know what I'm saying? Like the way just basic, the way you did. Like, hey, if you're not a fake man, you're not somebody pretending to be a man. You don't have some fake things added to you. Then you're a real man. So I think that's important to just touch on. Just pay attention to the way it's used.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. That's really what people are trying to say.
Yeah,
They're just trying to say, hey, this is a good man in
exactly.
whatever, and however they're defining good, whether it's respectable, powerful, strong, virtuous, whatever. Um, I'm just nitpicking the words
No,
because,
I get you, and as you should, because language transforms culture. Like, language shapes culture.
yeah,
So when you're using these terms, but like I said, I think it's important to pay attention to what people mean. Like when like with the same thing with masculinity, what people mean, they're describing four different things.
yeah,
People are saying real man, they really mean something else. And so I think you're right though. It's good that we should nitpick words because dissecting what really people actually mean by what they're saying. I don't think they're being as impeccable with their words as they should be because they're using a lot of blanket terms, and I think that's where a lot of the confusion is in. How we have all these blanket terms, and people don't realize that there's they're being used to describe something else.
100%. Yeah. I wanted to touch too on, I think we're definitely, I think anybody watching is kind of on the same page that, hey, there's some differences in masculine biology, like male biology versus female biology. I don't think we have an audience that wants to argue about that piece, right? But
Maybe, man, I've gotten an influx of new followers. Like I said, I've noticed that there's a lot of non-believers that follow the page, so you never know. You never know.
maybe so. The um, the list that you referenced, I want to talk about that list just a little bit. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the list, Herman and I are actually part of a masculine brotherhood. It's called the Gravitas Brotherhood. And we're actually running a special on that right now. You guys can join. There's links in both of our bios that you can check out to join the brotherhood if you want. But basically, it's a group of high-level Christian men trying to crush it in all areas of life, be based, submit to the ways of God. There's courses, content, weekly group calls, all that kind of stuff. If you guys want to check that out, it's running at a very, very highly discounted price right now. So that's in our bios if you want to look at that. But part of that community, the brotherhood, includes a training about this very topic, actually.
That's what I was referencing earlier, right? That polarity training that you're talking about.
Right. So the reason, and I obviously I coach men for a living, and so it behooves me to think a lot about this kind of stuff, right? So for me, whenever I'm thinking about a list of what creates masculinity or masculine energy, I think would be how you describe it. What does it mean to have masculine energy versus feminine energy? Because as we said earlier, both include traits that both genders can have. Sometimes a man can have feminine energy. And then people get up in arms about that. They're like, no, men should never have feminine energy. And then you ask them what it is, and they say things like nurturing and like softness and gentleness and receiving and inviting. And you're like, oh, so men should never do those things. Like, well, no, men can do those things sometimes. It's like, okay, all right. So we really got to be clear about what we're talking about, right? So this list that I've made, that's again available in the Brotherhood, is trying to talk about all these different things. So somebody said compassion in the chat. So I think compassion is a great example of a good human trait, right? Like Jesus, who many look to as the ultimate man, very compassionate dude, right? I mean, obviously, he died for our sins, right? That's going to take some compassion. But some might look at compassion and say, "Oh, that sounds kind of soft, sounds kind of weak, sounds kind of feminine," right? And maybe you look at the behaviors of high testosterone males versus low testosterone females, and you're like, seems like the females are more compassionate most of the time, right? So that's where we have to have the discussion of like, if you're trying to become a better man and exhibit more masculine energy, what should you be shooting for? And that's where that list came from for me. And so one of my favorite traits on there to compare is this idea of grounded versus dynamic. So the masculine trait there is to be grounded, and the feminine trait is to be dynamic. And what I love about these trait pairs is that you cannot be both about the same thing at the same time, but they're both good things. It's good to be dynamic. It's good to have a range of thoughts and emotions and expressions. As a matter of fact, that's one of the things that we love about women, right? One of the things that we love about feminine companionship is they're fun and they're dynamic. You know, they make us laugh and make us smile because they're not always just locked in and stuck on something. And they have a wider range of emotional expression typically. That's this idea of dynamism, right? So that's not a bad thing. But being grounded is also really good. And I think that's what feminine women look for in a man, is a man who is grounded. He's solid. You know, you push his buttons and nothing really happens because he's grounded in the truth. He's grounded in who he is. You cannot easily rock his boat. And I think one of our commenters said something like that in the post from yesterday, like having the spine, having the balls. I would call that grounded, you know? So I can't, like, if we're talking about our opinions on something, or if we're taking a position in a financial trade in the market, or if we are trying to build a company, it takes a degree of groundedness. You can't afford to be very dynamic with that. You have to be like, hey, this is what we're doing. This is my decision. I'm sticking with it. So it's advantageous to be grounded in those scenarios, which is why I think we see men excel in those arenas, right? And then there's other arenas where it's more advantageous to be dynamic, and we might see women excel more in those arenas, right? And so the issue is when we have men who become so dynamic that they're no longer grounded at all. And that's what we see a lot in society today, is a lot of ungrounded men. And those are the ones that we target with the, hey, you're not a real man, or man up, right? Because we all intuitively know, hey, men need to be grounded, right? We don't want ungrounded women. I'm not saying that we want women to be a kite without a string, but we do acknowledge, hey, for a woman to be ungrounded, it's less of a problem than if a man is ungrounded, right?
I agree.
So that's a lot of the logic behind these trait pairs, is like, you know, if we find a man that's unwilling to make hard decisions, that's a big problem. If we find a woman that's unwilling to make hard decisions, that's a smaller problem. You know, whereas if you flip it, let's find a man that loves making hard decisions. He's ruthless. He's kind of went too far, right? He's heartless, ruthless. He's cutting people off. He's cold, right? That's more forgivable. And we're like, hey, he's just kind of a jerk, right? But if you find a woman that's leaning way too much into the ruthlessness and the heartlessness, we have strong words for her. Starts with a B and ends with an H, is usually what we call that type of woman that's just heartless and ruthless, right? And I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying we should be harsh like that, but I am saying we intuitively understand that there are some traits that men should have and some traits that women should have. And I think trying to codify those is what's needed nowadays, to your point, because there's so much confusion on Is it the beard? Is it the muscles? Like, how do I?
Right.
Because a lot of guys, to your point, I mean, they're buying trucks because they don't feel like men. They're buying those big jacked up trucks, and they get the armory full of guns because there's some insecurity that they're trying to patch up. And I would say it has to do with a lack of connection to some of these traits.
I agree. I agree. Okay. So tying all this back to manhood, what would you say is the first initial step into manhood? Or how does a boy become a man? Is it possible to be a boy living in a man's body? Because, like as you said, a real man is an adult male, right? And I agree. But is it possible to be, a boy? Is it possible to have a boy's mindset in a real man's body? What would you describe as manhood?
I feel like that's huge. Again, 200 years ago, we're not having this conversation because when a man sexually matures and he starts out there, going out there and having sex, he's also having babies, you know? And so it kind of forces the onset of traditional gender roles that are dictated primarily by biology, frankly. That's, I would argue that God designed those, but I would also argue that he indirectly designed them as well through our natures, right? Because those traditional gender roles are not just found in Judeo-Christian religious cultures. They're found in almost every culture worldwide that have never talked to each other, right? So that they're hardwired in. And so 200 years ago, we're not asking this question because a man's or a boy's maturation into an adult, the timing of it is also marked by he's moving out, he's getting a job, he's taking responsibility. It all happened at the same time. And so there was no reason to codify it. There was no confusion about it. It was just like, hey, this is happening. So he's a man now. Whereas nowadays, it's possible to mature physically into adulthood, but not take on responsibility, not get married, not perform the roles that have been associated with being a man for thousands of years, right? And so I think that's where the question comes in. Can you be a boy in a man's body? My answer would be technically no, because you're still a man. You're just not acting as you ought to be. You're not acting as a man ought to act. It doesn't mean you're not a real man. It doesn't mean you're a boy. It just means you got a messed up mindset. You're not acting as a man ought to act. But I do think it's a mistake to question someone's identity just because of their behavior.
What do you mean by that?
So I'll say it another way. Anybody who's followed me for more than 24 hours knows I'm probably a little bit more socially conservative. Okay, so this is probably not going to come as a surprise to a lot of people. But I do take cues from some of the leftists' renaming of things. So, when I'm driving, 10 years ago, when I'm driving down the road and I see someone holding up a sign that's brown cardboard with black Sharpie on it and says anything helps or need food or something like that, I look at that person, I say that's a homeless person. But the left has come in and they have worked to change the nomenclature on that and said, no, we don't call them homeless people. We call them people experiencing homelessness or people that, unhoused or something like that. And you know what? I actually kind of like that because I don't want to slap a label on someone based on their current situation and say, this is who you are. You are homeless. No, how about this? You're just experiencing homeless. You don't currently have a house, but that's not who you are, right? I don't want to reduce that to who you are. And I have another issue with Alcoholics Anonymous and that structure. I've never been to one, but many of my clients have and my friends have. And what they tell me is they start the meetings by saying, I am an alcoholic. And to me, that's like, no, bro, like, don't reduce yourself to your addictive behavior. Don't like I see God up in heaven cringing when someone does that, reducing themselves to a specific behavior. I am a homeless, alcoholic, drug addict. Like, gosh, that's depressing. You know, like if that's who you are, if that's you, I guess that's you, oh well, right? It does not contribute itself to a growth mindset at all. It contributes to a fixed mindset, which we know scientifically is a lot harder to break out of. So that's why that's why my whole brand is built around identity, right? Your perception of who you are is so important to how you go about your life. And so I'm very hesitant to label someone as, you're just a boy living in a man's body. Because if he takes that to heart, is that going to help him? Is that going to actually help him?
I get what you're saying. It's basically like it's almost an affirmation. Like when you say I am, whatever you say after I am, it's basically an affirmation.
Exactly.
If you say I am homeless, you're affirming to yourself that. And it's also, I think you made a post on this, and it's true. The language of Spanish is different. You don't identify with things like how we do in English. In Spanish, if you say, I'm hungry, you say tengo hambre. I have hunger. Not I am hungry.
That's right.
I'm not like you basically saying I am a hungry person. You say I am hungry. I am perpetually hungry. No, I have hunger right now.
Right.
And so I get what you're saying. Anytime you say I am, you're identifying with that. That's an affirmation. And what you are affirming to yourself isn't something productive or isn't something positive in your own mind, but then it's to your own detriment.
100%.
100%, I get what you're saying right there. It's good. Like I said, it's all in the language, man. I think that's exactly like the conversation that we're having right here is just the breakdown of the terms that people are using. Okay, so speaking to identity, first off, okay, so I get what you're saying on manhood. I have a slightly different opinion. For me, I see manhood as, there's an entry level and then it progresses. You don't just become a man and boom, that's it. There's a progression level to manhood. And so, and you spoke about this, responsibility, right? You tied it into manhood. It's typically seen as manhood. It relates to responsibility, and that's a foundational view of mine is that entry level into manhood is based on responsibility and ownership. First off, for yourself. So a boy gets taken care of. A boy gets fed. A boy gets shelter provided for him. And when a boy does anything out in the world, the consequences of his actions ultimately fall on his parents, right? So in my opinion, the first initial step into manhood is the willingness to provide for yourself. Like I said, I want this to be practical and universal. Even people that can't physically provide for themselves, this applies to them as well. If a person is handicapped, born with no legs, or got his legs chopped off, there's this willingness. If you could, you would.
Yeah.
And if you can, you do.
Yeah.
Provide for yourself.
Right.
And it's that ownership of your actions. Whatever I do out in the world, it's not my parents' fault. It's not the government. It's not whoever's fault. I own up to the consequences of my actions. That decision and that mindset, to me, is the first step into manhood. When you decide that doesn't matter how you were raised, where you were raised, no matter what's gone on in your life previous, from this moment forward, why I'm going to become and what I'm going to do with my life is completely up to me,
Yeah.
and it's my responsibility. To me, and that doesn't depend on your age, doesn't depend on your physical capability. It's that mindset and that decision.
Yeah.
Now, it's all up to me, and even if you can't physically, you have the willingness. You know what I'm saying? There's Yeah. So that's the entry into manhood. You're a journeyman. You're a young man within the mindset, in my opinion.
Gotcha.
So, like, to me, it's a mindset. To me, it's a mindset and a decision. So you could be 30 years old and still expecting people to take care of you. You know what I'm saying? Even though you're 85, to me, that's the mindset of a boy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And if you do something, like, you're always blaming other people for whatever goes on in your life. It's always somebody else.
Yeah.
You don't know. To me, that's the mindset of a boy. And so, the way I see it, yes, you can be a boy, the mindset of a boy in a adult male body,
Sure.
but you can also be a 16-year-old, technically boy. You still haven't fully developed, but you're already willing to be fully, completely responsible for yourself. And whatever you do out in the world, you own up to it, and you don't expect anybody else to answer to that for you. To me, that's the mindset of an entry level man.
Yeah. So
That's the way I.
before we move to the next level, let me just make sure I understand. So you're saying entry level manhood from a boy to a man is this crossing this threshold of saying, hey, I have the mindset and willingness to take ownership and responsibility for my own life fully.
Fully.
Okay. How would you say that entry level differs for a girl moving into womanhood or adulthood as a woman? Is that the same for her, or is there a difference there?
I think it's the same, honestly. But like I said, that's different. So when I talk about manhood or womanhood, it's based on your character, based on your mindset. It's not based on any of the masculine or feminine attributes that you had mentioned. It's not based on biology.
Yeah,
It's the maturity level of your mindset.
got it.
That's how I view manhood, womanhood. So in my opinion, yes, it would be the same for a woman.
So, so
The willingness and the responsibility and the ownership of taking care of your own life.
okay, so it's kind of like step one of a boy entering into manhood is the boy becoming an adult. Is kind of a way to say that. Then, yeah.
Like I said, what's the distinguishing as a boy to a man? It's a child becoming an adult.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
It's just different verbiage. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But
So what?
depends. It's the same for a woman though. A female child
Yeah,
coming in an adult woman,
yeah.
it'll be the same thing, the responsibility level and the ownership level.
Heard. Okay, so what's level two then for, or kind of the next step for a manhood? Let's say the boy has become a man. He's taken responsibility for his life in whole. He's willing to provide, willing to own his life. All right, so he's done that. What would you say is the next level up?
Okay, so what I mentioned back previous is manhood comes down to responsibility. Back up. It comes down to refinement, responsibility, and roles. It's the
Right.
refinement of the character based on the responsibilities that they adopt, based on the roles that they choose to play. So basic level, entry level manhood, in my opinion, is responsibility for yourself. That is not based on morality, that's not based on anything. It's just you look out for you and that's it.
Yeah.
You're a man.
Yeah.
Don't expect nobody to take care of you, you're a man.
Yeah.
Next level, first level is responsibility for yourself. Next level is extending that responsibility out to other people.
Mm.
So now, you're willing to become a leader in some sense, whether that be in your job or you're a mentor of some kind. You know what I mean? You're willing to not only look out for your own livelihood, but potentially the livelihood of other people.
Yeah.
That's the next level, in my opinion. and how you handle all of your responsibilities is that's how your character is refined. You know what I'm saying? Or lack thereof.
Yeah.
So and it's all based on the role. You know, a basic level, entry level man having to be responsible for himself. He's gonna be a worker. You know what I'm saying? That's gonna be like the first entry level role that he's gonna take. Not responsible for anybody else, just for himself. He's gonna have to provide for himself in some type of way. So he's gonna have to make money in some type of way. A worker in some level, right? Step forward, step up is being a team lead in his occupation. You know what I'm saying? That's how a manhood progresses, is extending the responsibility from yourself out to other people.
Yeah. 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 Did you ever see 10,000 BC?
No.
So it's this like it's like a B grade movie. It's not even that good.
Yeah,
Um,
wait, yeah, it's the dude with the dreads and the saber tooth tiger. Yeah, it's been a long time, but I think I have seen it.
yeah, bro. So I like it. It's not that good of a movie, but I like it because it talks about your concept. Um, so it's just in the movie, the main character runs into he has a conversation with a mentor, which, by the way, if you follow the story of a man, like that's always part of the hero arc, right? Is like the hero, the masculine hero, he goes through hardship, and then he runs into a mentor who gives him some really good advice, kind of during the middle of the story, typically, whether that be Mr. Miyagi or Yoda or Gandalf or whoever it is. It's this mentor that comes along and says, "Hey, this is what's up." And in that movie, it was just such a simple deal. They're out in the desert, I think, and this is back when they were fighting with spears primarily. That's how their tribe fought. And the mentor, he pulls the guy in. He says, "Hey, listen, a man." He takes his spear and he draws in the sand. He says, "A man draws a circle around himself, and anybody who steps inside that circle, he takes care of." And so it's like this circle of people, at your job or in your family. If you're married, they would be your wife and your children, obviously, that are in your circle. And he said something to effect of some men draw small circles, and that's fine. But some men are called to draw larger circles around themselves. And he said, "Hey, that's you." He said to the main character, "You need to draw a big circle." Teaching him this concept of um, your role expanding, right, to your point. And so that one line has stuck with me for a long time, which I think speaks to
That's a
my nerdiness
good.
on the subject. But it's a good concept. As you expand into manhood, as you grow into manhood, your circle will probably grow larger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Definitely agree with that.
So you would say it's kind of step one, responsibility, and then from there you're just growing, you're further refining your character, and you're growing in your roles.
Pretty much.
Was there another R there, or was that it?
So refinement of character,
Yeah.
responsibilities
Uh-huh.
based on the roles that you choose to play.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I said, so your point, is fatherhood a mark of manhood? Well, no. Like it just the roles and the responsibilities that you choose to adopt is depends on you.
Yeah.
And you can have big responsibilities without being a father. You know what I mean? So it's
100%.
okay.
Yeah.
So like I said, this is where most men get their sense of identity,
Yeah.
their sense of meaning. And this is where you see a lot of men where like they don't have any sense of meaning, they don't have any sense of purpose, because this is a brittle foundation basing your sense of identity in what you do, it's susceptible. So, okay, so if you're stripped of the ability to fulfill that responsibility, you can no longer perform that role. Now your sense of identity is stripped as well. So this is where I think a lot of men nowadays, if they don't believe in anything higher, they don't believe in anything else other than themselves, they base their identity on the role that they choose to play. But like I said, you can no longer fulfill that role. What now?
Exactly.
You base your identity on what you can do. If you base your identity on how strong you are, or you base your identity as whatever, performance based, you can no longer perform, you no longer have an identity.
Right.
So now let's tie it into God, Christ. You know, we as God don't have this problem because we don't base our sense of identity, our sense of purpose, our sense of meaning. What we do, we base it on who God says we are, right?
Right.
And what biblically, who does God say we are? We are sons of God. We are heirs to a kingdom. And we are a royal priesthood. And we are a new creation.
Right.
And that is true no matter what you do, no matter how old you are, lack of responsibility or not.
Yep.
I think it's good to hear. I think so. I gotta jump on. I gotta get off of here pretty soon, 8:50. So I think it'd be a good time to, like, the end of this, speaking to God now, tying this all in together. Okay, so we kept it practical, universal. That this applies to everybody. Now let's speak to men of God. What does it mean to be a man, or have your sense of identity based in God, or tying all that masculinity, manhood, all of it into men of God? What would you say? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. That's a big soapbox for me to jump on, so I'll try to be brief. But the first thing I'll say is those that list that we've discussed, and for those of you who didn't hear, we're discussing a list that's included in the Gravitas Brotherhood, and this list covers all of the things that I believe, from my coaching and training and content, exhibit masculine energy. So this is going to help you, whether you're a Christian or not, but definitely for men of God. This will help you as you navigate these things that Herman said, which are your responsibility, the refinement of your character, and your roles, right? So, you know, if your role is a leader, a husband, a father, or maybe one day it will be, but not yet. Maybe you're just an employee, maybe you're a student. As you grow in responsibility, refinement, and roles, what you want to be looking at is this list to help you exhibit more masculine energy in that. So these things like sacrifice, vanguard, being grounded, being consecrated, expansion, protection, obsessed, initiating, challenging, these are all included in that list. And that is part of a training that's included in the masculine, the brotherhood, the Gravitas Brotherhood. And again, if you guys want to pop in, most of the groups like this that have weekly group calls and exclusive content and exclusive platform, number one, they're on school, which in my opinion kind of sucks. No offense to Alex Ramosi and Sam Ovens, but I think we can do better than school. So we have an exclusive platform, and most groups that are on school, they're running like 125, 150 a month. This group is 80 a month, and Herman and I are both in this group. Really solid group. We got identity-based challenge going on right now, actually. But this group is $80 a month, and tonight and tomorrow we're running it at $47 a month, and you can cancel at any time. So I do want to plug that just really briefly. You can access the full polarity training there, and the links for that are in both of our bios right now. But to answer, what's that?
I said, not to interrupt you, but that's a good training, by the way. That polarity training, like, I know you mentioned that you kind of breeze through it, but it's still pretty in depth for just breezing through. You know what I'm saying? So yeah,
I appreciate it.
If anybody wants to check that out, or Yeah, I'd recommend joining the Brotherhood.
Yeah. The another course we've got in there that's been really helpful is goal setting mastery, which goes over discipline and motivation, the correct setting of goals to really crush your goals. You get all of that with the 47 a month, and again, you can cancel at any time. So it's definitely worth checking out, even if you end up dipping. But our retention's pretty good so far, so I think you'll probably like it. But the what does it mean to be a Christian man? I think you have to understand that God's calling on our life is what it is, whether or not you have all these masculine traits. So, you know, some men, their testosterone is low, but they're still called to be husbands and fathers. Some men, maybe they grew up in a home that was dominated by their mother, and so their masculinity has been kind of sanded down. Or maybe they had a toxic father that they're trying to never be like, or maybe he rubbed off on them, and so they have some masculine traits that are dialed up too high that have become dysfunctional. So the thing with the masculine feminine energy is, you know, it's all good. It's good to be dynamic. It's good to be grounded. It's good to be sacrificial. It's good to be nurturing. All those things are good, but you're going to find as a man, it's easier to fulfill your God-given calling if you develop your masculine traits. Because the roles that God has prescribed to men, biblically speaking, are just easier to perform when you have masculine traits. So I would definitely lean into that. But like you said, and like I say all the time, your identity is different. And the problem with identity, according to God, is our ego hates it. Like you said it, you nailed it earlier. You said, you know, we are who God says we are. Who does God say we are? Well, we're sons of God. We're adopted, beloved sons of God, bought by the blood of Christ. We're a royal priesthood. We're heirs with Christ. And those things are absolutely amazing. We do not act like that. We do not live like that. Those things are absolutely amazing. But one of the biggest reasons why we don't lean into that identity is because the ego will not have it. Because the ego says, nah, I want to be special.
And this is what you help men with, though, right? Like this is what you do, right?
Yeah, this is like whenever I work with men, this is what we're tackling is this issue of identity, because instead of accepting the identity that God gives us, we want to make our own. We want to identify with the big truck, with the big job, the money, the women. We want to identify with the muscles, the deep voice, the beard, whatever it is, because our ego loves that. The ego hates the identity that God gives us because everybody gets it. It's like when the girls show up to the party and they're both wearing the same dress, they hate each other. It's like no, she's got that dress. I wanted to be special. I wanted to be different, and men do it too. We say, no, I get that I'm an adopted, beloved son of God. I get that I'm a royal priesthood and a co-heir with Christ, but so is Luke, so is Herman, so is Joe. And I want to be special. The ego wants to be significant, different, special. And that's why we attach to all of these other identities, these false identities. No, a real man does this. And typically whatever we say is something that we think we can do, right? Or something that we're striving for, something that our ego is saying to shoot for, right? And it's so damaging. And so to be a Christian man, obviously, as we've discussed, the man part has a lot to do with your biology. Okay, so if you're listening to this and you've got the old XY chromosomes, you're pretty much there. You've got that part of it down. Now, as you said, there's levels to that. Taking responsibility, refining the character, expanding your roles. But as you progress through that journey, I would say as a Christian, the most foundational thing you can do is learn to identify with what God says about you, not with what the world says manhood is, not even with what we say manhood is. but with what God says about you. Because what everybody can agree on in our audiences, for sure, spiritual or not, is that a man does not dictate his self-worth through other people's opinions. But if you start putting your identity in cultural fluctuating indicators, things that change over time, or performance, like you could get fired from your job, you can make less money, people might not buy your product anymore, somebody might lift more than you, all these things can fluctuate depending on other people's reactions and opinions. And so if you ground your identity in those things, then man, your identity is as shaky as your circumstances. And you're setting yourself up to fail, which is why you're going to see Andrew Tate, Elliot Hulse, Andy Elliott, Bedros Keuilian, Andy Frizzaglia, the list goes on. All of these rah manhood guys that are on TRT and lifting weights and all these things, they will only stay relevant as they age when they start to identify more with the spiritual. Because as they age, they start to realize, oh, some of my strength is going away. Oh, maybe my business isn't what it once was. Oh, I'm not able to attract as many hot women as I used to could. And then they start to realize, hey, maybe manhood is more than just the external. Maybe my identity doesn't need to be placed in these things. Now, unfortunately, they've spent years, if not decades, of educating their followers to the contrary. And only then do they realize that there was something more. So for those wanting to live fully into Christian manhood, man, I would tackle that immediately. Look at the identity piece. Am I identifying with who God says I am? Or am I identifying with what my ego wants to be special in? Athletics, money, women, whatever it is. Those are usually the main ones.
If there's any men of God listening to this, struggling with this, this is what Luke does. Like, this is what you help men with, right? So I definitely recommend reach out to Luke, book a call or something with him. He's like, this is what you do. This is what you help men with.
And this is what we do in the brotherhood too. I mean, we're talking about this stuff on the daily in the brotherhood and applying it to dating and fitness and finances, all these things from that base Christian perspective. So that's what I'm really excited about that as well. And again, the link to join that is in both of our bios.
Sure. All right, man. I got about 5 minutes left on here. Did you see if there's anybody has any questions we could answer before we head out? Or?
Yeah. If there's any questions from anybody in the chat, we can definitely check those out. I'll scroll up a little bit here, but anybody that's watching that wants to chime in, go ahead.
If not, then
yeah, I think we're good.
I think we're good, man. Let's wrap it up unless you got something else to say.
No, we're good. It was a great discussion. I really like your the R's that you gave, the responsibility, refinement, and roles. That's a good takeaway.
Conversation.
Always.
Got to do it again soon.
Yes, sir.
So, have a good night.
Right on, brother. We'll see you soon.